Well, good afternoon, everyone. We begin with a vote in a small Alabama town that could have had huge implications for Amazon's business model. We learned late this morning that workers at an Amazon warehouse have overwhelmingly rejected an offer to unionize. That gives the tech giant a victory in its biggest battle yet against labor organizers. The warehouse workers would have become the first Amazon employees in the U.S. to join a union. With me now from San Francisco is Bloomberg tech reporter Ed Ludlow, who's been covering these results all day and in the last few weeks. Hey, Ed, give us an idea what the threat could have been to Amazon and its business model if the workers there had voted to unionize.
I think largely, the market viewed this as more important for the US labor movement generally than really posing any real risk to Amazon's top or bottom line growth or indeed its business model. You have to remember, Amazon now has more than 1 million employees around the world, 1.3 million. In the US, it's second only to Walmart. And in Alabama, question was around 5,500 workers. It's also not the first time that Amazon has faced a unionization movement. There was one in 2014 that didn't get very far. What's really changed, as you know, as I know, as the audience knows, is that Amazon's really in the public consciousness over the last 12 months. Because of the pandemic, lots of people have come to rely on Amazon.com to order things. It's grown in such a massive way. And as part of that, it invested heavily in new fulfillment centers, new distribution centers. But because of all of that activity, because of all of those workers being in close proximity to one another during the pandemic, the focus then turned to working conditions. But if you read across Wall Street, there was never really any serious concern that this would lead to a dramatic impact to how Amazon operates its business.
Why do you think that is, Ed? Because it did seem like Amazon had a really aggressive campaign to prevent the employees there from unionizing. So if Wall Street wasn't worried about it, why did Amazon seem so worried about it?
Yeah, I think Amazon would argue that, look, we pay $15 an hour to our workers, twice the national average wage. We provide health benefits to our workers. And from Amazon's point of view, they would argue that is better than some union workers already get. Amazon pushing back on unionization is not a new idea. It's been happening for 20 years since the company was founded. On the union side, they are going to appeal the outcome of this particular vote. They say that essentially Amazon intimidated the workforce. A Freedom of Information request basically unveiled that Amazon had installed a postal box on site where, in close proximity to the offices where workers were posting their ballots, because it was a mail-in ballot. And Amazon countered saying, well, it's optional. You didn't have to use that ballot. The union argued, Amazon held one-on-one meetings with employees and group meetings to basically outline the consequences of joining the union. Amazon said, no, those were information sessions for workers. So, it has been very hard fought, the battle. It will be appealed. I don't think necessarily that it's going to go away in Alabama. The hope for the union was that this would just be the starting point, that if they were to succeed in Alabama, it would spread to other states. And part of that goes back to what I was just talking about. Amazon has grown in such a huge way. It's such a big employer that the potential for the labor movement was there. It just didn't happen this time around.
So what does this mean moving forward for Amazon, Ed? There have been smaller unionization efforts in other parts of the United States at distribution centers, and they certainly haven't reached these levels. But what does it mean for workers in other parts of the U.S.? I mean, is this the end of Amazon workers trying to unionize?
No, we know that there are grassroots initiatives in a number of other states. We know that they will appeal on this case. Amazon also is a global company. Amazon continues to deal with union strikes, union efforts in Europe in particular. Amazon has been in Europe since 1998, and during the course of the pandemic, in line with that growth that I was talking about, in Italy, in Germany, where union participation is much higher, they've had to deal with that. They've had to negotiate. They've had to deal with the prospect of strikes. If you're an investor in Amazon, the question is not necessarily how much does this cost. Amazon financially is doing very well. It's about the disruption and efficiency. You have to remember that in the world of e-commerce, time is everything. Amazon is facing a threat from Walmart, from Target, from other players, and a lot of that centers around how quickly it can deliver packages. And reading across Wall Street, speaking to analysts, yesterday and this morning, that's where they were really focused, that if the union is successful going forward, they expect it to be on a very small percentage of the overall workforce. And it's not how much it costs Amazon in terms of dollars. It's about, will it disrupt Amazon's ability to do one-day delivery? Will it make protocols that make them slower? That's the concern, although the concern is not that great.
So, Ed, it's interesting because Amazon is a different type of company when it comes to employees than other tech companies that you follow closely in Silicon Valley, because it does have such a large number of workers who do work in fulfillment centers rather than other companies like Apple and Google, of course, that have employees who, are engineers. Is there this idea, though, that there is sort of a labor movement going right now through Silicon Valley, through tech companies, through Seattle?
Yeah, so the first thing, in Bessemer, Alabama, 5,500 employees for Amazon is a tiny percentage of Amazon's overall workforce. But for that city, it's incredibly important. They are the biggest employer. And at the end of the day, we haven't yet got the final tally from the vote, but the no's to unionization won pretty convincingly. A number of those employees voted against unionization because they are happy with a $15 an hour wage. They are happy with the health benefits, and I won't speak for them, but at issue was the working conditions. But definitely and it doesn't just relate to Amazon, by the way. On Capitol Hill, you and I have covered lots of hearings in recent months. In the public consciousness, there is a question around the size of these tech companies. Again, with the Biden tax initiative and tax program, Amazon came out very quickly to say, we're in favor of raising corporation tax. They got ahead of it. But definitely, for lots of these companies, Amazon is Seattle-based, but here in Silicon Valley as well, these big tech companies, either on competition grounds, on data grounds, on tax grounds, they've really become part of the public consciousness over the last 12 months. And in part, that's because they're in our day-to-day lives so much because of the pandemic.
Ed Ludlow from Bloomberg News joining us from San Francisco. Ed, it is always great to have you on the show. Thanks so much. And you probably saw some tweets up on the screen from Richard Trumka.